A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Some people claim that everyone must follow the halakha conclusions of the Mishnah Berurah. Is this really the case?
Well, of course, as with many things, it depends whom one asks. There are those who make this claim, and we'll discuss this further in a moment. My opinion is that it is impossible to say regarding any halachic work, whether it be the Mishnah Berurah or the Rambam's Mishneh Torah or Hilchot Harif or the Beth Yosef or any halachic work that one wishes to point to, it is impossible to say, incorrect to say, that all Jews must follow this particular halachic work. Or even to say, for example, that all Ashkenazi Jews must follow this particular posek, or all Sfaradi Jews must follow that particular posek. I do not accept such a line of thinking. And one of the reasons, not the only reason perhaps, but one of the reasons for my view on this matter is that which Rambam writes in his Hakdama, in his introduction to his Mishneh Torah, to his great halachic work. And he writes there as follows. I will read and I will translate. This is in the Hakdama, Oth Lamed, towards the end. He says, Im lamad ahad me'gaonim. If one of the great halachic sages, he refers to the Gaonim by this term. He refers to the great Chachamim who preceded him, who were the Rashei Yeshiva, the heads of the Yeshivot academies in Babylon. Im lamad ehad me'gaonim, shederech hamishpat kachu. In other words, that this is the halakha regarding any particular matter. That the halakha is X. V'nitba'eh levet din acher, she'amad aharo, she'en zederech hamishpat hakathu b'Talmud, and it became clear, it was the view at least of a later authority, another Bet Din, or another Chacham who came later, another sage, who disagreed with this form of view and said this is not the halakha, but the halakha rather is Y. En shome'im l'rishon. One does not necessarily have to listen to the first opinion, to the earlier opinion. Ela lemi shehada'ath nota lidvaro. Rather, one has to follow the opinion of which seems more correct, the opinion that reason and a proper understanding of the halachic sources and a proper analysis of those sources and understanding of the matter at hand, whatever this correct kind of analysis and understanding leads us to conclude is the correct opinion, the more reasonable opinion, that is the opinion that we should follow, says the Rambam. Ben Rishon, Ben Aharon, whether it happens to be the earlier, the former opinion, the earlier authority, or the later authority, the one who came second or third or fourth, it doesn't really matter. In other words, Rambam is saying here something which runs against the grain of the standard halachic thinking that is very frequently heard nowadays, namely that when it comes to the question of klalei pesika, what is called in Hebrew klalei pesika, which means the general halachic methodology that one should follow when it comes to deciding halachic issues, Rambam at least felt that there is only one rule that one has to follow, and that rule is that there are no rules. The only rule is that you have to follow the truth. You have to search for the truth. You have to look into the sources, delve deeply into all relevant material, and weigh up all things as correctly, as precisely, as objectively as possible. And on the basis of that study and analysis, one is to reach a conclusion, what the correct halachic stance should be. This is the Rambam's only klal pesika, the only rule of thumb that the Rambam gives us when it comes to making halachic decisions. And the fact of the matter is that, to the best of my knowledge, all the Rishonim, without exception, and all the Gaonim also, followed in those footsteps, or those who came before the Rambam acted in the same way, and those who came after the Rambam also worked in the same fashion. This kind of halachic thinking was common amongst all the Rishonim, Baalei Tosafot, and the Chachamim in Spain, like the Ramban and the Rashba and the Ran, etc. Wherever you look, wherever you turn, you will see that up to the time of the Shulchan Aruch, and even actually beyond that time, but certainly up to that time, all halachic authorities were of the view that the halakha is whatever the chacham, whatever the halachic sage deems the halakha to be, based on his very best efforts to reach the truth. That is the halakha, at least as he sees it, and that is the halakha that he has to tell people and instruct people to follow. So, with regards to your question, is there a reason that people should be told that they must follow the Mishnah Berurah or any other halachic text? My answer to that question is no. If the question is asked, well, if that's the case, how is a person to know what the truth is? There are many different opinions on many different issues. The answer to that is also, I think, rather straightforward. Either a person is capable by himself to study the matter at hand, because he is a Tamid Chachamim, he is someone with the halachic knowledge and background in order to study the matter and reach a reasoned and well-argued conclusion, in which case, if it's clear to him this is the halakha, then he should follow that view, that he has, that conclusion that he has reached. And if a person is not capable of doing so, then we have the Mishnah, Masechet Avot, Aseh Lecharav. One should have a Rav, a teacher, and a posek, and someone that one can turn to precisely to ask such questions where one does not know the answer.
Why did some people choose the Mishnah Berurah as opposed to any other halachic work as the definitive halachic text?
Well, that is also a very good question. I've asked myself that question many times. I can tell you that when I was a young yeshiva student, one of my teachers at that time said to me, this was in the Yeshivat Merkaz Harav, that Klal Yisrael, these were his words, Klal Yisrael kibel al atzmo et Mishnah Berurah. And the Mishnah Berurah is the posek aharon. In other words, the Jewish people have accepted upon themselves the Mishnah Berurah as the final authority, and the Mishnah Berurah is to be accepted on all matters. These were his words. And when I asked why, or when I queried this position a little bit more, he said something to the effect that the Hafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir HaKohen Miradin Zitzal, known as the Hafetz Chaim, that he was a great chacham, and no one should challenge his views and his opinions on anything. That was his particular view. The trouble with that opinion is that it is simply not true, because this individual, this Rav, was assuming, as most people do, and that is what one is likely to assume if one looks at any volume of the Mishnah Berurah, that it was written by the Hafetz Chaim. And generally speaking, this is true, but it is not entirely so. We have the writings of the son of the Hafetz Chaim, Rabbi Aryeh Leib HaKohen Miradin, who was the son of the Hafetz Chaim and a great Talmid Chachamim in his own right. We have the book here, Kol Kidvei Hafetz Chaim. And volume 3 of this set, we have Michtavei Hafetz Chaim, collated by his son, Rabbi Aryeh Leib. And one of the things that we find in this volume is a biography of the Hafetz Chaim, many biographical details regarding the Hafetz Chaim's life and how he worked and how he wrote and studied, etc. And much of it is also autobiographical. The son writes about himself and his interaction with his father. It is very fascinating. On page 42 and 43, he describes how parts of the Mishnah Berurah were written by himself, by Rabbi Aryeh Leib, but not by his father, Hafetz Chaim. he mentions at the bottom of page 42, he says, "Omnam החלק היותר גדול מהלכות שבת חיבר מר אבא בעצמו." It's true, he says, the majority of Hilchot Shabbat, my father wrote himself, but part of Hilchot Shabbat, he says, I wrote. And he writes this not to claim any credit for himself, but simply to relate the facts and the reality as it was, so that people should be aware. Later on page 45, he goes on to describe how his father wrote to him later and asked him to come and move to Radin and study with him, so that they could continue their work on the Mishnah Berurah. So we don't actually know, with regards to all the different parts of the Mishnah Berurah, the different volumes, exactly what was written by whom. With regards to Hilchot Shabbat, we have the explicit statement by the son that most of Hilchot Shabbat were written by the Hafetz Haim himself, and some was written by himself, by the son, Rabbi Leib, who records this fact at the bottom of page 42. And on page 43, he even brings an example of this fact, or one of the results of this modus operandi, because he says in Siman Shin Yud Het it says X, and in Siman Shin Kaf Het it says Y, and these two statements contradict each other, and I'll read them to you in a moment. And he goes on to explain the reason for this. He says is very simple. He says, "V'sibat hadavarhu," the reason for the contradiction is Shebesiman Shin Yod Het hu mi yesado shel Mar Abba. This was written by my father himself. Hu ahaz b'shitat hara'ah. With regards to a certain question, he followed the opinion of the Ra'ah, and that's why he wrote what he wrote there. And in Siman Shin Kaf Het hu ktav yadi. This is something that I wrote. V'anuchi ha'etakti la'alacha shitat harashba. And I wrote there according to the opinion of the Rashba, who differs with the Ra'ah. And therefore you have this difference of opinion. Siman Shin Yod Het Seif Bet. The Shulchan Aruch writes, "Hashohet b'Shabbat lahole ben shehala me'ethmol ben shehala hayom mutara bari le'echol imenu." Hi. If a person is sick, very sick, hole sheyesh bo sakana, and therefore meat has to be found for this person, fresh meat, which is not available right now, therefore we have to do shahita, we have to slaughter an animal on Shabbat, which is vadai normally asur, and this person may have been ill already before Shabbat or only on Shabbat. He may have become ill, it doesn't matter. If he is now a hole sheyesh bo sakana, he is a person who is very ill, it is mutar, and in fact a chovah is required that we slaughter an animal, we do shahita for him to provide him with meat, to help him get better. And seeing that we have done so on Shabbat, and was mutar to do so, therefore it is also mutar for a healthy person to eat from that meat, but not cooked, only if it is raw. To eat that meat raw on Shabbat is mutar, because the shahita was mutar. It was correct and proper to do the shahita on Shabbat because this person was ill. However, says the Shulchan Aruch, aval hamevashel, a person who cooks on Shabbat for a person who is sick, lahole asur labari, it is asur, it is forbidden for a person who is healthy or who is ill but not seriously ill to eat from that cooked dish on Shabbat. We are concerned that the person doing the cooking, if he knows that there are others who will partake from this food that is being cooked, they will add more to the stew, to the pot, they will make a larger amount, and therefore they will be cooking not just for the sick person, but also for the people who are not really sick at all, or not sufficiently sick, to cook for them. And therefore it is asur to eat from something that was cooked on Shabbat for a sick person, if you yourself are healthy. And the Rama adds, وَأَفِيلُ بِشَيْلٍ al yedei nukhri. The Shoah should say, in some editions it was censored to say, Yehudi or Akum or what have you, but the correct version is Afilu bishel al yedei goy or nukhri asur b'Shabbat. Even if the cooking was done not by a Jew, but by a non-Jew. In other words, we asked a non-Jew to cook for us, for the sick person on Shabbat, for whatever reason it was more practical to do it in that fashion, and the non-Jew did so. It is asur, it is forbidden for us, for the healthy person, to benefit from this food that is cooked on Shabbat. Alright, so we have the halakha. We know that you're allowed to do shahita for a sick person who is seriously ill, if it is required. It is also mutar to cook for such a person on Shabbat. But a healthy person may not eat from the cooked food on Shabbat. What about on Motzei Shabbat? This is written in the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Yod Daled. It says, "B'Mosei Shabbat mutar miyad." It is mutar. It is permissible immediately when Shabbat is out for the healthy person to eat from that which was cooked on Shabbat for the sick person. And the reason is ta'amud dechewan ha goy bishel beheter, seeing that it was mutar for the non-Jew to cook. La ba'e lahamtin bichdei she'asu. There's no reason for us to wait after Shabbat, the time it would take for us to cook this meal on Shabbat, which is normally the rule with regards to something that would have been cooked by a Jew who was not allowed to cook on Shabbat. We have to wait on Mosei Shabbat, the time it would take for that dish to be cooked after the Shabbat. In other words, we are not to benefit from the fact that it was cooked on Shabbat by being able to eat it immediately when Shabbat is out. We have to wait the time it would take. So if it takes an hour to cook that dish, we can eat it 1 hour after Shabbat is out. And furthermore, this is quoted from the Gra and other poskim, that seeing that it is mutar in such a case for us to ask a non-Jew to cook for the person, in such a case, the Chachamim did not stipulate that it is asur to eat bishulei goyim, to eat something cooked by a non-Jew, so the Jew may eat this immediately on Mosei Shabbat. So here we find in Siman Shin Yod Heth that it is mutar for a Jew on Mosei Shabbat to eat that which was cooked by a non-Jew on Shabbat for a sick person. So to sum up, what we find here in Siman Shin Yod Heth, that is number 318 in the Shulchan Aruch in Or HaHaim, the Shulchan Aruch writes that it is asur for a healthy person to partake of a dish cooked on Shabbat for a person who is very ill. And even if it was cooked by a non-Jew on Shabbat for the Jew who is very ill, it is asur for the healthy Jew to partake of it. As for Mosei Shabbat, it says in the Mishnah Berurah, Siman Katan Yod Daled, that it is mutar immediately after Shabbat to partake from this cooked dish. This Siman was written by the Hafetz Chaim himself, as is written on page 43 in the book that I quoted from before. The son, Rabbi Aryeh Leib, the son of the Hafetz Chaim, testifies to this fact that this Siman was written in its entirety by his father, and that was what his father wrote. On the other hand, we have in Siman Shin Kaf Heth, that is to say number 328, Seif Yod Teth 19, it says, Hole She'en, this is the Shulchan Aruch, Hole She'en Bo Sakana, a person who is ill but not very seriously ill. So we're not allowed to cook for this person or to do shahita for this person on Shabbat as in the previous case. However, such a person, in order to get better, is allowed to eat of things cooked by a non-Jew, even though normally we don't eat of such things. It says in the Shulchan Aruch, Holeh she'en bo sakana mutar b'vishulei goyim. Such a person is allowed to eat things cooked by a non-Jew. It says in the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Samech Gimel, Umashin ishar Mosei Shabbat, that if that which is left over on Mosei Shabbat, in other words, the person cooked this, shall we say, on Shabbat, the non-Jew, he cooked it for the person who is ill. What happens on Mosei Shabbat? We said on Shabbat, the person who is, if he's a Holeh she'esh bo sakana, he is allowed to partake from this food. He's allowed to eat it. We're allowed to cook for him, and as a non-Jew is also allowed to cook for him. On Mosei Shabbat, we saw previously in Siman Shin Yud Heth that even the healthy person may partake of this cooked food after Shabbat. Here, however, it says, Machon Shilo Mosei Shabbat, that which is left on Mosei Shabbat, asur afilu lahole asmo, even for the person who is sick, it is asur to eat from it on Mosei Shabbat. Kevan she'efshar b'shelo az al yedei Yisrael, because at that time, after Shabbat, it is now mutar to find a Jew who will cook for him, and therefore even the sick person may not eat from that which was cooked by a non-Jew. There is a clear contradiction between these two statements. In Siman Shin Yud Heth, the Jew may eat that which was cooked by a non-Jew, seeing that it was mutar for the non-Jew to cook this food at that time for the Jew, and it was mutar for us to ask him to do so. Therefore, and in such a case, the Chachamim did not enforce the usual rule regarding bishulei goyim. The gezerah is not to be applied here, and therefore a Jew may eat, even a healthy Jew may eat of this food after Shabbat. In Siman Shin Kaf Het, which was written by Rabbi Aryeh Leib, the son of the Hafetz Chaim, as he himself writes on the page that we mentioned, page 43 in his biography of his father's life and his works. That Siman was written by Rabbi Aryeh Leib, and there he writes that that a Jew may not eat the food cooked by a non-Jew on Mosei Shabbat, because now it is possible to find a Jew who will cook the food for us. And this is the view not of the Ra'ah but of the Rashba. So we have a mahloket amongst the Rishonim, and the father, the Mishnah Berurah, was posek according to the Ra'ah, one view, and the son was posek according to the other view, according to the Rashba. So for those who claim that we have to follow the Mishnah Berurah because he is the posek Haron, and because the Hafetz Chaim is such a great authority, one could very well ask the question, what are we supposed to do in such a case? And I suspect that many people have never heard this before, that the Mishnah Berurah was not all of the Mishnah Berurah was written by the Mishnah Berurah, by the Hafetz Chaim, that is to say. But I can tell you that many years ago, something like 35 years ago, I believe, I heard something to this effect from a particular person. The name of this person is Harav Ben Sion Vosner. In fact, I think that was the last time I actually saw this person. He was at one point the Rav of a shul in my neighborhood in Australia, and therefore I knew him as a young person, as a teenager. And later in Israel, when I was studying here in Yeshiva already, I met him on Hol HaMoed Pesach or Sukkot. I don't remember whether it was Hol HaMoed Pesach or Sukkot, but I know it was Hol HaMoed. And I spoke to him in the presence of another person whose name I also recall. And this, I believe, was in the year Tafshin Mem Aleph, 1981. And he said to me at that time, he is the son, Rav Ben Sion Vosner is the son of the very famous Hagon Harav Shmuel Vosner Zitzal of Bnei Barak, who passed away during the last year. And he said to me in the name of his father that we do not always agree with the Mishnah Berurah, because we do not know. We know that not all of the Mishnah was written by the Hafetz Chaim. Some was written by his son, and we don't know what was written by whom. And therefore we can't really rely on everything that it says in the Mishnah Berurah, so therefore we take a more independent stance. And I had never heard this before, and I asked him where he knew this from, and he said, Zeyadua, it's well known. He didn't give me a source. But the source, I have found the source. It is written explicitly in the hand of the son of the Mishnah Berurah, of the Hafetz Chaim. So that which is generally considered to be the handiwork, the writings and the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah, that is to say of the Hafetz Chaim, it is necessary to know that this is not always the case. So in conclusion, all this is probably most relevant for those who claim that they are following the halachic decisions of the Mishnah Berurah, that is to say of the Hafetz Chaim. But the fact of the matter is, it's not always so, and they themselves can't be sure that it is so, because no one actually knows with certainty exactly which siman was written by whom, by the son, by the father. I'm not, by the way, suggesting that the son was not a great halachic authority. He was a great Talmid Chachamim as well. But those who claim that we are following this book because it was written by the Hafetz Chaim should be made aware of this fact. And all these facts serve to demonstrate very clearly how weak and unconvincing many of the assumptions and the conventions that many people claim to be binding and claim that they hold by, how weak and unconvincing and unsatisfactory these conventions are. Because many of these notions that we follow this posek or that posek, and for this we do so for this reason or for that reason, are in fact, when one examines the matter, not really based on objective fact at all. With regards to people who follow the position of all the Rishonim, all the ancient halachic authorities, as we quoted from the Rambam, for example, that the only rule when it comes to psak halakha is that there are no rules, and that one has to follow that which seems to be the most correct and precise opinion based on an objective research and analysis of all the sources. If that's the view that we follow, then it really makes no difference who wrote this or that siman in the Shulchan Aruch or in the Mishnah Berurah. By the way, I just mentioned now, without really intending to, the Shulchan Aruch, and I'll end with this, I won't go into the details, but something similar is also true with regards to the Shulchan Aruch. There are those who claim, and there is basis apparently for this claim, that, and this is something I only learned to myself not very long ago, that the Shulchan Aruch, as we have it before us, which is basically a summary of what the Beit Yosef writes in his commentary, the Beit Yosef on the Torah, was also not written entirely by the Beit Yosef, by Rabbi Yosef Karo, but parts were written by himself and other parts by another individual or more than one individual, and therefore again we see how flimsy some of these great halachic edifices and these claims that are made regarding these works, how flimsy in fact they are.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.